Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View basketball webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Walljasper along with Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Valentic. Steve, Missouri's certainly not a guaranteed team to make the NCAA tournament. Do you subscribe to the theory that if they find their way in it, that they are going to be a dangerous team?
I think there are a lot of reasons to say yes. You look at them; they're an imposing team. I mean, they're a big team. They're one of the best rebounding teams in the country. Until Saturday night's loss to Kentucky, they'd really been dominating the glass for the last month. They're the only team in the country with 6 guys averaging in double figures. They've got guys who've played in the tournament before, whether it's Phil Pressey or Lawrence Bowers or Alex Oriaki. All of these things, and they've got some good wins too. They beat a top 10 team in Florida, beat a team in Illinois that's beaten the top 2 teams in the country, beat a pretty good VCU team. I mean, they've had decent success in tournaments, going 2 and 3 in the Bahamas, and have played good competition. All of those things. The other side of it, though, is that they've really struggled in late game situations, and really struggled on the road. And finally, I just don't think their defense has been very reliable. You look at what happened the last 25, really maybe even 30 minutes against Kentucky on Saturday. Just breakdowns all over the place. They really struggled to get stops. Kentucky, which is not a great offensive team by any stretch, shot 65% from the field against them, and over 60% if you add in overtime. So I just think there are a lot of reasons not to like what we've seen from these guys so far.
Yeah, what I like about them is there's not going to be a physical matchup that's going to be problematic for them. If they run into a big team, they're fine with that. Small team, I think they're all right with that. And I like the fact they have balanced scoring. I think that's better. So if you have one star and he has a bad night, you're not cooked. I would agree that their big issue, and it was the same at the end of last year, is that their defense, especially their perimeter defense, is terrible. Keon Bell plays some defense, but Jabari Brown, if he's not scoring 16 points a night, he is a complete liability because he's going to give up about 20. If, God forbid, they ever play a team with a Princeton offense, he's going to give up about 80 points on backdoors. I mean, just asleep at the wheel. And then Phil Pressey, when he wants to, will play a little defense, but he doesn't want to very often, from my estimation. I mean, against Florida, he seemed like he was a little bit into it, but most of the time he's sort of content to let the guy go by him and try to poke the ball out from the backside. When you've got 2 of basically your 3 perimeter guys that are playing bad defense, I mean, that's a recipe for giving up a lot of career nights. You know, usually teams in the NCAA tournament have some pretty good guard play.
Yeah, and you look at it, it puts so much pressure on your big guys. And Missouri, while certainly stronger up front than it was last season, it doesn't have a tremendous amount of depth there. They're really playing a 3-man rotation. Frank Haith's getting a couple of minutes here and there, maybe out of Ryan Rosberg. Maybe he'll play Ernest Ross at the 4 on occasion, but he hasn't really liked to do that. He likes to play Alex Oriaki, Lawrence Bowers, and Tony Criswell, and those are his guys. And Missouri can have a tough time when 2 of those guys get in foul trouble, if not 3 of those guys. And we saw that against Kentucky, where late in the first half when Kentucky goes on its run, Lawrence and Alex are both on the bench in foul trouble. And then Lawrence, you mentioned Jabari Brown. He I believe was unable to kind of fight through his screen, and Lawrence got switched on Julius Mays late and got put in a bad situation basically because of a defensive breakdown and made a mistake by leaving his feet, and Mays leans in and gets his 5th foul. And then Missouri doesn't have one of its top offensive threats.
Aside from just getting beat backdoor all night, he also, anytime someone pump fakes from outside the 3-point line, he goes flying through the air at him so the guys can just drive around him. I mean, he's a liability in every way, shape, and form defensively, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly had a rough night against Kentucky, and didn't help things that he wasn't shooting the ball well himself. So I think it does start out front, though, with this team defensively, because they do have the personnel and up front or in the front court to stop the ball, but the guards have to be better up top, keeping guys out of the lane, keeping those breakdowns from happening, doing a better job contesting shots than they have to this point.
Now, they've won a couple close games, either home or neutral, but I wondered also, like you mentioned, how much it's in their head now that they're kind of expecting the worst in a close game away from home. When you get into the tournament, obviously, maybe your first-round game could be a blowout, but the rest of the way, if you're going to win, they're going to be close games, and they've got to sort that whole thing out because I think their confidence has to be a pretty low ebb as far as closing out a close game.
I would certainly think so, given what we've seen and five of the road losses out of 7 have been games that either went to overtime or were decided in the last possession, and Missouri hasn't made plays in any of them when they really needed to. And you mentioned maybe the first round game could be a blowout, but where they're going to be seated, you're not counting on that many blowouts in the 8, 9, 7, 10 range, which it looks like Missouri would probably end up at this point. And as you said, they've got work to do to get in.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to finish strong here. They need a win. They need to win their last 2 home games. They need another road win, and they're probably going to need to win a game or 2 in the SEC tournament to get some momentum going into the tournament.
If they were to win their remaining home games, lose their remaining road games, and be 10-8, are they in the tournament in your mind? They would have a whole bunch of teams ahead of them in the standings that people don't think are going to make the tournament.
I think they would probably get the benefit of the doubt over a lot of those teams because they beat Florida. Arkansas is the only other SEC team right now that can say that happened. They also, I think, did more before SEC play started than really anybody in the league, maybe even including the Gators. Played a tougher schedule, challenged themselves a little bit, had 3 pretty solid games in at least from a strength of schedule standpoint in the Bahamas. Played Illinois, which has struggled in Big Ten play, but has still pulled off some big wins, beating Indiana and Ohio State. So all of those things, I think if you look at their body of work, it's still probably a deserving body of work for an invite in what everyone admits is a really down year in college basketball. But as you said, if they're the 6th place team in the SEC, and the SEC looks like maybe a 3, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 bid league, depending on how Ole Miss or maybe somebody like Tennessee finishes. I don't know. I wouldn't feel real good about Selection Sunday if I were Missouri in that situation.
Okay. Well, tune in again next week. We will discuss Missouri's games against South Carolina and LSU and look forward to a trip to Tennessee.